So we are joined by Peter Ting, who not only jointly curated Blanc de Chine Contemporary with us, but is also one of the artists featured within the exhibition. And just to give a bit of background, Peter himself has a background in both studio and industrial ceramic design. He has worked as a product designer for Thomas Good and as head of homeware at Asbury. He founded his own studio in 2012 and launched Ting-Ying Gallery in 2016, which focuses on Blanc de Chine porcelain. So we have collaborated with Ting-Ying Gallery to bring you Blanc de Chine Contemporary in the gallery this October. And Ting-Ying Gallery are passionate about engaging a new audience with the exciting work that's emerging from the craft and design world. And with its rich history, Blanc de Chine's living craft tradition continues to thrive today with an enriched creativity. And this exhibition actually brings together 7 artists, not all working in Blanc de Chine, but all inspired by such a material that's imbued with a sense of history and tradition, and their work sits in that context. But actually, the story of this exhibition, Peter, started a little while ago, didn't it?
It did.
It was last May, which was a very, very different time. And it was an exhibition within the Scottish Gallery titled A Natural Selection, which was a mix of ceramic works and silver works, all looking at the natural world in different ways. And your work featured, as you can see in some of these install images here, these beautiful flower bowls. And Peter, myself and Christina started talking to you about the possibilities of future collaborations, and one of them was a Blanc de Chine exhibition. So you were kind of working on just a small project at the time as well. Can you tell us a little bit about this exhibition?
I can indeed, and hello Kirsty, and hello everybody, and so a little bit about Blanc de Chine, a continuous conversation. Blanc de Chine, for those people who don't know anything about it, it is the white porcelain that left China in the Ming Dynasty. And it actually was the first porcelain that came to Europe, arriving. Marco Polo was the messenger. So he bought a tiny little jar, and now it is in Venice. And it's also always called the Marco Polo jar. And that jar was actually made in Dehua. Where is Dehua? Dehua is in south of China. So those people who know Taiwan, Taipei is the top of it. If you draw a straight line across, it hits the coast of China around Xiamen and Quanzhou. Quanzhou is the port that Marco Polo actually sailed out of China from. And if you continue your that straight line by driving from Quanzhou, is about 2 hours up and down lots of hills. But now it was a whole day's drive up and down hills, and now it's 2 hours through modern day tunnels, and you arrive in Dehua, which is 5,000 meters above sea level, and it is tiny, and the whole town is devoted to making Blanc de Chine. There you go. And then we set up this wonderful little exhibition display. You're seeing the one in China Hall, which is on the ground floor, and then there's another room upstairs with more contemporary work. So this is more historic, tracing the origins and how Blanc de Chine moved across.
And this is currently on display at the V&A London, actually enjoying an extended run, isn't it, Peter? On until the 18th of October.
Absolutely. You could view this room on the 18th, yes, until the 18th.
And a number of the artists that are exhibiting at the V&A in the show that Peter has just described are within this exhibition as well. So I will move on and let you see a couple of installation images of the gallery. And this was a lovely sunny morning. We are promised another, I'm sure. But what we have here is just the most serene kind of environment. These pieces are not all purely white by any means. You know, people would think a Blanc de Chine show would just be purely white, but actually we've got these beautiful colors, and the way the light plays upon the works as well is just beautiful. So we have 7 artists within this exhibition, and their work is all totally different. There is nothing similar at all. And like I say, not everyone is working in Blanc de Chine, but we do have Blanc de Chine as a material here as well. So we will start by looking at Geoffrey Mitchell. Now, he creates, I think his work is amazing. He creates real joyful narrative pieces. Can you explain a little bit more about his work, Peter?
I can. I met Geoffrey through a friend. So my friend Barry owns the he is submerged in the art world, and he owns the Eva Hesse estate. So Barry said, you must look at this artist. I think his work is terrific. And so I saw Geoffrey's work initially through images, and I talked to him, and then I met him, and it was just the most tremendous, joyous experience in my life. So Geoffrey calls himself a gay folk artist. That just answers every question about what is Geoffrey. So he works with a lot of imagery from poetry, from Dada. He is very influenced by Dadaism. And he also uses imagery from the gay subculture. So there are a lot of bears, and some of them are very rude, and some of them are not. And he has elephants, and he spells them elephant, E-L-E-F-A-N-T. He never spells it in a normal way. He uses a lot of text, alphabets, and the photograph you could see is him actually working in Dehua, in our studio, working on pieces for the Blanc de Chine exhibition at the V&A.
Thank you so much. And here is another example, because some are more figurative, aren't they? And he isn't afraid of scale either. You know, some of his pieces are quite extensive.
Yes, he is not afraid of scale. So this is quite a wonderful piece, The Farmer from Pelusi. And you can see that the metaphor is very obvious. He's holding a cockerel, and he confronts you with this cockerel. And if you look further down, the farmer has no trousers on. So it brings all these things into play, and is also he's a very three-dimensional person. He works in 3 dimensions, and everything is decorated, front, back, top, and the bottom. And I have to tell you, the most joyous thing for me is getting a delivery from Geoffrey, because when you open the crate, inevitably he has put something really unusual or drawn a little heart. I don't know whether you saw his box.
Yes.
So
yeah,
you look at it, yeah, and it's, you know, and you just go, oh, you know, he's thought of everything, and he's just terrific. So this is a piece of sculpture. It is very innocent looking with smiley animals, but they are all referencing the snake is for longevity, not of renewal of life, as people believe that the snake, as it sheds its skin, it lives on forever. So that's a symbol for that. The cockerel is a very obvious symbol. Then the bears are more the gay symbols. I don't know what the little dog is doing there, but he seemed very happy.
So from symbolism and figurative work, we've got something entirely different with Jacqueline Poncelet, and we've got, you know, two beautiful pieces within the exhibition. I've got an image of one here, and it's, you know, on first glance you think it's potentially quite, you know, unassuming, a quiet piece, and then you see the play of light and how light really brings a piece like this to life, because you've got these little nuances of architectural design, haven't you, on the surface here,
I
in
mean, this
such a
is a
fine
museum,
wall.
yes, absolutely. And also, just to say to everybody who's looking at this, it's uh, we're really fortunate that Jackie contacted me about this body of work. This body of work, when her mother and some of her family passed away, they actually made their way back to Jackie, into Jackie's possession, and she didn't quite know what to do with them. So, and I was very keen to show artists' work, artists who were really key, important artists, to remind people that they still exist and they're still making amazing things. And Jackie was the first of the artists that we showed. And we showed this work. It was just, people just came up and said, "How did you get hold of this?" This work was only made between 1973 and 1976, 1977 maybe. And it was a specific period of time, and she never made them again. They're bone china and they're slip cast. And at that time, it really changed the whole way people looked at industry, because those were industrial materials and industrial processes. But she just like nailed it and turned it into a complete different thing. And she's currently got a huge one-woman show up in Roche Court, which is exquisite. I mean, Kirsty, I told you about it. I wept my way through half of the show. It was so moving and touching. And she is what I would call a real artist. You know, she makes, she challenges, she questions, she exposes all her self-doubts and worry, and it's all there on the wall, and it affects you, and you respond to it. And this is tiny. This piece just sits in your hand like this, and it's all there. Everything is there for you to look at, to feel, or just feel happy looking at it.
And she constantly, I mean, she says that she kind of constantly reinvents herself, and she's always questioning. I mean, who would believe that the same artist that we've just seen has created, yeah, this amazing piece? And this is titled Wrapper. It's a permanent work, and it's actually the building in perimeter by Edgware Road Tube Station. And what you're looking at is a huge panels, I mean huge panels as well, in vitreous enamel, which of course is a industrial material, which is used more and more. I know lots of jewelers are exploring vitreous enamel and its uses, but it's not, it's often linked to tube stations, because a lot of the old interiors of the tube stations in London, the signage was vitreous enamel, so there's a lovely link there.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think each section relates to her research based on different areas in that vicinity, doesn't it?
It does, yes. And also, if you look back to the piece that you just shown, that is a very architectural, you know, you can imagine that being the frontage of the building.
Definitely.
With no problem
and you've got
whatsoever.
these similar motifs and just little sections of architectural design that are almost teasing you on the surface here as well.
Absolutely.
That you see, you know, in a totally different form here.
Yeah, very
no, her
robust.
work's amazing.
Yeah, she is. She's, as I keep saying, an amazing artist. And interestingly, Jeffrey draws as well, and the drawings in the case at the V&A was the response to Blanc de Chine, and how he first came across. So the history. So he was born into a family of 9 children, and he's the middle child. He then went off. I think 10 children, actually. He would have four. He has 4 brothers and 4 sisters. He's the middle child. And being gay, in Middle America, he just wanted to run away. And the first encounter with beauty was a book, a Blanc de Chine book. And the drawing references all the pictures that he remembered. And then he recreated them as an homage to Blanc de Chine, which is where it all started off for him.
Gosh, it's so interesting, isn't it? There's a starting point for everyone, and they're always so different as well.
Totally.
Whether you've been inspired by work or an ancient piece you've seen in a museum or a gallery, it's really interesting. And here, Peter, we have yourself. I mean, this is a collaborative work, isn't it?
It is, and I have to say that without Zha Caiduan, I call her Zha Ayi. Ayi is the a term of endearment for a lady and who is not a young lady anymore. And Ayi, you just call her Auntie Zha. That is how I would always call her. But this is very interesting. So the story behind this is really simple. I visited Dehua in 2004. I was preparing an exhibition in Shanghai, and I wanted to make something that would. So I made a group of monumental pieces in Jingdezhen in 2004, and I made and I really loved Blanc de Chine. I would see Blanc de Chine as I was growing up in Hong Kong. You know, you would see temples, people would have Blanc de Chine, Bodhisattvas, Guanyin in their homes. So they're always within my consciousness. And so I wanted to see people to make, to do beautiful things. So I made a series of work for that exhibition. And then I had an idea for making, I love the flowers, but I didn't want it to be, I wanted to be transportable. So this is a combination of design and beauty. So I had the idea of if we had a robust cylinder, and in contrast, inside the cylinder, there were lots of flowers, it would make transportation a lot easier and safer. So this idea has been in my head for, I don't know, 10, 12 years. And I could never find a right person to make the flowers. Either they made beautiful flowers, but had no aesthetic, so they couldn't understand how the flowers sat next to each other. Or you could understand somebody, you could meet somebody with aesthetics, but they didn't have the skill to make the flowers. And it wasn't until 2016 when I met Ying Jian and I told him about this idea. And he said, you must meet Zha Caiduan. So I met her via Skype. So it was a lot easier. It was so Zooming is no stress to me whatsoever. It's just, you know, simple. So anyhow, so I met her and she gave me, and we just started talking and making, and she would make all of this. So for everybody, this is all made soft. The whole piece is made when the clay is soft, when the clay is leather hard staged and it's joined together. And then the whole thing is fired. So if one petal broke, it's gone in the fire. You cannot mend. So it is quite a stressful process. We started off with 99% failure rate. No, we did, and we persevered, and persevered, and now it's slightly better, but not much.
And I should say that these flowers, that when you see them in person, you can be fooled to think they're silk. They are so fine and translucent. They're amazing. And yet when you look closer, you see the intensity of the form. You see that there's no movement at all. You know, it is stuck fast, like it's frozen in time. but you get an element here of almost a rewilding, you know, almost like nature taking over this cylindrical form, and that it's going to, you know, you do believe it will grow.
Yes, you
under
do,
your
you
watchful
do.
eye.
Yes, and one of the most asked for questions, there are two: how do you clean them?
Yeah.
One. And it's very easy. You just use a air spray can, and you just use the air to clean the dust away. And they're really exquisite when you see them. And that softness of the clay during the making. And the other question that people ask is, how long does it take? So I could tell you that to make a simple flower, it takes 榨彩端 20 years and 20 minutes to make.
Because it's all of the skill that she has learned that goes into that.
Without the 20 years, the 20 minutes will never happen. So she makes them, it's quite quick because the clay dries really, really quickly.
Alice, so to something completely different.
I met Alice a few years ago. She left the Royal College maybe 5 years ago, I'm not sure. Excuse me, Alice, if I haven't kind of put your date. So Alice's work is just terrific. Alice is terrific. There are people in life you meet that you just think, oh my God, she's great. And it was Alice's birthday yesterday, by the way.
Oh, happy birthday, Alice, from all of us.
And Alice makes work. So every single color that you can see is colored all the way through. So she puts oxides into her clay and mixes them all through. And then she builds tiny structure pieces by pieces to build this amazing cacophony of tones, not a cacophony of color, but of tones, which I love. And they're all inspired by places that she's been to. For instance, the piece she is working on now is pre-fired. So the tonal difference is very, very small. So you have to remember this palette. I think she has a palette of 200 different colors.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And she just builds things up, and she has the patience of a saint.
And they're by no means all flat wall pieces. If I move on to the next slide, the piece on the left has this amazing 3D quality. So it doesn't matter which angle you look at, you see different lines, different stories, I mean, it is like you're looking at a landscape.
Yeah, completely. And the tones, it comes from the earth tones, come from the landscape, as I was saying, and she builds these structures. And I asked her, because the structures are quite simple, and I asked her that, you know, where do the shapes come from? And when she was at the Royal College, she would cycle to the college, and she would come across a lot of street furniture, so bollards and crossing poles and all this very hard geometric forms. And you could then now, the minute she said that, you just think, oh yeah, of course, they are that kind of big, heavy form, but with this incredible delicacy of landscape running through the whole thing, which I think is very, very beautiful and attractive.
And then we move on here. Now, I mean, these pieces, she says she's deeply interested in the formality and framework of rituals. And I think the piece we're looking at here, you told me, Peter, it's actually designed to take tea lights, isn't it? They can sit within the form.
And when we received the pieces and she gave us the title, we all went, she can't. So I have to just rewind slightly, and you would see Wan Ying on the right-hand side is her in her studio in Alfred University, working on her decorative, on her graduation, MA graduation work. So the piece she's actually working on, that is in the V&A show. In fact, everything is in the V&A show. So that particular piece is based on that whole series of work was based on ritual. Because when she first went to America, the language, the customs, the whole situation of her being in a different country, she just left China then, was very, very different to her, and she was slightly overwhelmed by it. So she didn't kind of talk a lot. And then slowly she felt that if she built an environment where she felt calm, hence the paper hanging came into it, and that it made it easier for her to engage with her tutors, her fellow students and friends, and that's how that body of work came about. And the title of that body of work was also based on one of the last Sung, not one of, the last Sung Dynasty emperor, who is an incredible calligrapher, artist, poet, but a very bad emperor. Hence, he was the last one. But he left a whole series of calligraphic type that we call the slender gold type, which is really admired and copied. And he has left incredible poetry, which she used a line in the poetry to inspire that body of work. And then going back to what you have in your gallery now, Women's Vessel, as she was making this, she was thinking of her mother, who was still under the one-child policy system. Why would she give up a life, a time, a career to have a child, Wang Ying? And also at the time as she was making the pieces, she actually became pregnant herself. So it was all about her body, about containment, about the woman holding something that is so precious, that is life for the next generation. And so these are things that they are containers, but they are actually, oh, it's making me all tearful thinking about it. Just it is a container for so many things. And which is why I love ceramics and glass and things that are vessel shaped, because you know, the first vessel we have is this. We scoop water up to drink like this. You know, that's our first vessel. And through that, we made clay vessel, we progressed to bronze, to metal, to really sophisticated gold and silver ones. But at the end, it holds something. It could be a secret, it could be life, it could be so many different things.
And then we have Emma's work, which upon first glance, you think you are looking at beautiful bleached dried flowers. You know, they're so believable, but actually what we're looking at is a sculpture made entirely of bone and brass. I mean, it's amazing, and you know, you have to see it in real life to really see the detail that she's got there, and how she has put this together is just amazing.
Absolutely, she's incredible. Sorry, you say.
Peter. No, on you go.
Emma is a young artist that I came across him via my partner, because she just wrote to him totally out of the blue and say, I'd like you to come and give me a tutorial if you don't mind. And he did, and he came back and enthused about both Emma's way of looking and the way she works. So I went to visit her, and I was determined to kind of represent her, because they are such hard pieces for people to accept. They look at it and they love it, and then the minute you tell them they're made of bones, they go recoil in horror. And I always quote her first one-woman show at the Saraban Foundation, which is called Remember You Must Die. And I've always loved the title. I love the way she looks at things. And she started making these from a very simple idea, and that is to recycle food waste.
Okay.
So she has this army of chefs that supply her with bones, and she would occasionally have to buy bones, mainly chicken feet, because they actually give her that lovely fine structure of the flowers. And so there we go. But she makes them in the most incredible objects, and this is lovely, Gloria, and Gloria is the name of her grandmother, who sadly passed away. Yes, no, sorry.
I was just going to say another piece. I mean, this is the final artist in the show that, you know, it fools you completely, is this piece here. Can you tell us a little bit about his work, Peter? Because this, you know, when you view this in the gallery, you think you are looking at paper. You think you are looking at, you know, coiled paper, parchment that's become worn, just sitting in a little pile there. But it is Blanc de Chine porcelain of the thinnest grade.
It is. And I think the story of the piece is really, really important, because Su Xianzong is a master. He is not just a master at porcelain. He is a recognized master by the Chinese state. So he also is very contemporary. He broke all molds and traditions of making Blanc de Chine figures and Bodhisattva figures, very abstract, very beautiful objects. And the reason this body of work came was that he wanted to, a few years ago, the #2 state porcelain factory in Dehua became bankrupt. And there was a loss of, I think, 3,000 jobs. And I think he was very angry about that. So he wrote to the government and he said he would like to take the fire bricks out of the kilns, of the disused kilns in the factory, and turn them into artwork to give it a new lease of life. And also at that point of time, he was experimenting on making these very, very thin paper, which he makes on a plaster bat, is a specific Chinese type of muslin that he actually tears or he cuts by scissors. So the edges are very important to him. And he paints the clay onto that, and he layers it a layer by layer by layer by layer. So it's very intense work, but it's actually for a very short period of time. So he has lots of people helping him, getting the paper ready. And he's the one who layers it and forms it, deciding where it curls. So there's like, oh, I don't know, easily 500-600 sheets of porcelain. And you have to remember they all have to be kept in the same moist condition. And then as they slowly dry, he turns them, curls them. The time on this is quite short, the making time, maybe a week or so, or 2 weeks at the most. But what takes the time is the drying time. So you think it's a thin sheet of paper, but if you put 500 sheets together, you have a big, thick block of solid clay that has to dry very carefully, very slowly, in a very controlled environment. And they take between 4 months to 6 months to dry.
Gosh, so the making process is really the start of the journey, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. So it's inspired by a failed factory into how do I make this? How would it travel? How would it be shown into something of an exquisite beauty?
Amazing, thank you. And here it is. These are our own photos from within the gallery. So we tried to get quite a close up for you to see that you really could be fooled. I mean, it is beautiful. And there's actually, if you do see this piece, you can see just a slight shimmer on the very edges where it has been fired, and it's almost like the edges have burnt, isn't it? It's almost like sugar crystals you can see on the edges.
It is. Well, you have to fire it. Blanc de Chine takes a very high firing temperature, higher than all European porcelain. It goes up to 1300 degrees, 1320, 1350 sometimes. So it's really high fired. And the firing kind of fuses the clay together, but it also gives it that amazing sheen on the edge where it is actually melting and forming a glaze on itself.
And here we are. These are the images I showed at the very start, just to let you see. And you know, you must book an appointment to come and see the exhibition if you can. It continues until the 24th of October, but if you can't, then on our website, if you were to click on the Blanc de Chine Contemporary Exhibition, you can actually explore through our virtual rooms, and there's a little, just a still of that on the top right there, but you can navigate your way around and click on the work, and it's not the same as being in the gallery, but it's a step in the right direction. and like I said earlier, Blanc de Chine, A Continuous Conversation, the exhibition at V&A London, continues until the 18th of October. And we are just so grateful to Peter Ting for taking on this project when there was a lot going on in the world, as we all very much know. He got the work to arrive safely with us in the gallery. We are delighted to have the show for this month. And thank you very much, Peter, for all that you've done. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for making such a beautiful display. It looks exquisite.
Not at all. And I'm sorry you can't be here to see it.
Not to worry. Anyway,
thank you
keep
very
well,
much,
everybody.
everybody. Thank you, Peter. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.